Mama Film Village. I'm Lela Meadow-Conner. Thank you for joining Mama Film's Community Cinema Convo series, a video podcast where film fans can join the conversation and support the work of stories and storytellers we love. Mama Film is a film series to showcase films with themes of nurturing and to ignite conversation around the human experience. Since we're not physically able to gather in our micro cinema here in Wichita to experience movies, we're excited to have this platform to connect us, at least in some way, with people from all over the world. Today, we were talking about the documentary Michelin Stars, Tales from the Kitchen, which is streaming now in our virtual cinema at mama.film. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce Eric Moore, our co-host, joining us from Los Angeles, where he works as a programmer for AFI, American Film Institute Film Festivals. And today's guest, very special guest, is Wichita restaurateur Natasha Gandhi-Rue, who is a classically trained chef and chef owner of The Kitchen located at Union Station downtown. So Eric and I will moderate the first part of the conversation and begin with some questions. And Bill, if you have a question or comment, please feel free to type it in the chat. I know that you're a foodie, so you might have some ideas too. And we'll get to them as we go. What's really amazing about the Michelin, so there's so many really kind of amazing and wild things about the Michelin system, but only 2,290 restaurants in the world have one Michelin star. 414 restaurants have 2 Michelin stars, and 113 restaurants only in the entire world have 3 Michelin stars. And in fact, I found this really interesting article. In this January, celebrity French chef Marc Verrat sued the Michelin Guide after his restaurant La Maison des Bois was demoted to 2 stars a year after they received the 3-star rating. He claimed that a Michelin tasting expert mistakenly accused him of using England cheddar cheese in his souffle instead of some traditional French varietals. So he then asked Michelin to hand over proof that this was the case, and their notes from the tasting. Michelin's lawyers called him a narcissistic diva who should have more respect for the freedom of critics' opinions, and he lost the case. So therein lies, sort of a little overview of like the history and the prestige and the sort of, I don't want to say, of the Michelin star system. So Eric, I'll let you go ahead and ask the first question.
Yeah, I mean, let's start by talking about the Michelin star system itself. It seems rather odd that something that started off as a tire company's way of selling tires by getting people to travel and go to these restaurants that they recommended. They started this over 100 years ago. And even the logo still looks like the Michelin Man. So Natasha, I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. Is it arcane or is it still relevant? And what do you think about the film?
I think it's only relevant to the highest end of fine dining. I think there's a lot of people who have no idea what a Michelin star is, nor have heard of those restaurants. So I think of course there's prestige, and they're like artists, honestly. The chefs that earn those stars, it's amazing what they do, but I don't know if I don't want to say it's archaic, because I think it's still relevant to that community of chefs and restaurants. But I think for the rest of us, it doesn't have a relevancy. I think now younger chefs would rather be featured on TV, get their own cooking show, be doing things like that, have like chefware with their signature on it, things like that. That has a lot more of a, I don't know, I feel like that is a more intriguing aspect for chefs today than the Michelin star is. Like I said, unless you're working in that ultra fine dining cuisine, because those are the only ones that get Michelin stars, Yeah.
And so like being a chef nowadays is a little bit more about like lifestyle branding.
Yep.
Kind of, yeah.
I think so. I really think so. I think it also depends on, honestly, it depends on what your motives are and also why you cook. And cooking is a great expression of art. It's extremely creative. And I think the Michelin star shows us the highest forms of that cooking art. that's out there. So as a chef, it's super interesting to watch, but it doesn't connect me to food. Like, I don't look at it as like, yeah, sure, I'd like to go eat at that, because who wouldn't want to? If there was someone that had an art gallery and had something beautiful in it, I'd want to go see it too. But it's not a connection to food the way I think of food, or I think the way a lot of people think about food.
Yeah, so do you have any idea of how people are invited to get reviewed by Michelin?
I have no idea. So Michelin has always said it is completely anonymous. Sorry, I don't know if that's impacting you, the computer.
It's okay.
That they're completely anonymous. I don't know if that is really true or not. I have never heard. So I'm originally from New Jersey. So, New York City has a very strong food critic community, and people don't know who they are. I mean, they actively make sure that they are in costume, or that they are not recognizable, and so forth. And it's always been one of those things that you don't know who you're serving. And I would like to think it is anonymous, honestly, because I think it should be impartial.
Yeah, the whole film critic thing is fascinating to me. I mean, obviously we deal with critics in a different way when we're talking about film.
Right.
But, it's not hard for us to go see a film anonymously, but it's hard to go to a restaurant anonymously. So
exactly. And Ruth Reichel, she was the New York Times food critic for like decades, right? She, in her autobiography, she writes about once they found out what she looked like, or had an idea that she was a dark-haired woman, yada, 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 she had to go to so many extents to change the way she looked so she could go in and anonymously, judge the food that she was eating or critique it.
Yeah, and on the flip side, this is all tangential, but on the flip side, you have critics like Jonathan Gold, who everybody knew what he looked like. Everybody knew. I mean, you couldn't miss him for a number of reasons.
Absolutely.
He was so joyful about food, and it was always about kind of the experience in the restaurant itself, and not so much about like taking down a restaurant or anything like that. So.
And I think that because of people like him, or critics like him, they've allowed the food experience to be more joyful, which is what I honestly think that's what it should be. If you want to take apart a plate, well, I mean, if that gives you joy, then great. But I think for the rest of us, what I would rather read an article that is filled with positivity and like, oh my God, so this dish was brought out and the server was, happy about it and stuff like that, than read someone tell me I didn't use the right cheese, or the fork had, one tine that was slightly angled off of the other tines, or something ridiculous of that nature.
So, okay, with all that said, what did you think of the film?
I liked it. It was definitely awe-inspiring to see the plates that were coming out of those kitchens. I mean, obviously I've heard of some of those chefs. I have some of those chefs' cookbooks. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And I think it was Guy Savoy who said it in the beginning. He said, it's about passion, but he considers himself an artist. And I think that is 100% right. What they're doing is an art form. It's not just about the taste. And one of the Spanish chefs said that, he goes, they might like it, they might not like it, but we want to develop it in this level of, he was working on a molecular level with some of the things he was doing. He was after a different goal than what it's going to taste like. And I think that's really interesting. Did my mouth water when I saw the dish? No. I didn't want to be like, oh my God, I definitely want to eat that. I would want to eat it out of curiosity, but not out of feeling like, oh, this is such an indulgent plate of food and it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I definitely had the same experience where it was very rare that I saw something that really excited me. Like nothing made my mouth water in the way that, looking at a lot of, large plates of home cooked food would definitely do that. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like thinking about like big plates of pasta and things like
Right.
that.
And even if you look at fine dining, like I was really fortunate. Like where I grew up, we got to eat at some of the most amazing restaurants. And my husband and I went to Daniel Boulud's place, Danielle's, which is his highest restaurant class-wise. It's the fine dining of his. And every bite was beautiful, but every bite was a party in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, it was beautiful, but I couldn't tell you what any of those plates look like now. But I can distinctly remember when that gnocchi burst in my mouth, how it tasted. Like, I can remember those flavors. And to me, that is masterful, like to be able to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, so the movie gave us an interesting glimpse into a world that, you know, most of us will never experience. Like that one guy who was like, I traveled to this and this and this, you know.
Right.
Like, wow, must be nice. But
Right.
You are a classically trained chef. You studied at the French Culinary Institute in New York City. I left a career in Hollywood when I was about 30 and moved to Chicago and went to Kendall College and did a two-year culinary program there. And I had no idea what I was in for. It was hard, and people, you know, have no idea. And of course, I've done nothing really with my training. So here I am still talking about movies. So that didn't work out too well, but I've got some nice skills. But can you talk about your experience in culinary school and what brought you to like this career?
So I went to culinary school as an adult. Like I had already graduated from college. I had worked in corporate America, and I just wanted to stretch my creativity. And I love food. Like look at me, I love food. And I also I can't do anything artistic. Like I'm not creative. I can't even put flowers in a vase right that look good. But I can work with food, and it's such a nurturing thing to do. So culinary school was a complete shock for me too. Like I came from wearing suits and having my nails done every week to coming home on the train with fish scales stuck to my face. Like it was a shocker. It was great. It's not for the soft at heart. Like the culinary school I went to was run by a bunch of French chefs, and they know what they're talking about. But they have a different, like their respect and what they teach you to respect about food and equipment is unbelievable. You don't waste anything, and you better be prepared to get yelled at a lot. I had never been yelled at like that, ever. And so it was like, I always say it was like boot camp for me, because it was learning a whole different way of creating stuff. I learned all those basics, all those classic techniques that I feel like everybody should know that wants to cook on a professional level. And then it was, you not only learned classical things that you have to know, but that also gives you the knowledge to then take off from that. So if you never learn how to saute properly or make your mother's sauces properly, then how are you going to expand and create your own sauce? You have to know how to do those things and do them correctly. And once you know how to do them correctly, you know, it's an open world and you can go in all different directions with it. So culinary school was fun, but I cried a lot in the beginning. I won't lie.
Hard. And like having to have your chef whites ironed and pressed and, you know, and clean and
you had to wear like, I feel like I'm dating myself, but I think probably still like that. Yes, you had to wear the handkerchief underneath. Mm-hmm. You had a toque on, mm-hmm. and then you had to wear an undergarment under your chef's jacket, and then you had polyester herringbone pants on, and then you had to have very heavy non-slip shoes on. So like your whole attire was rigid because you're learning things and they want you to learn exactly that way. So even the way you are dressed is rigid, and you got to get used to being in a really hot kitchen dressed all up like that. Yeah. And so, and you absolutely adjust.
There's nothing sexy about that outfit.
No.
And you just brought back memories of like this. There was this old chef, I can't remember his name, but I can picture his face. And he was like, "What is your Mickey Mouse spatula?" Like just, and like just these chefs, like, and there was a Swiss chef who would always yell at us, like, like stuff of my nightmares. Yeah. So what was your career beforehand?
I was a project manager.
Okay.
So I worked with Fortune 500 companies and federal government, and I wrote bids, RFPs for them.
What was like that impetus, that moment when you were like, all right, I'm switching, like I'm going to go to culinary school. I'm going to do something totally different.
It was almost like it was a personal aha moment. I was getting a divorce. I had no children. I had no mortgage. And it was the time that I could say, I need to do what I want to do because I'm not going to be able to do it again. And so I was like, I'm going to go to culinary school. I'm going to go back and live at home with my brother because both my parents are passed. And I'm going to take the train into New York City every day, and I'm going to go to culinary school. And I didn't ever think I would work in a kitchen full time. Because that is a different lifestyle, and it's not a lifestyle that I'm very comfortable with. I don't want to work until 2 a.m. I don't want to work holidays. I don't do drugs. I don't drink a lot. And it's a different world in a kitchen. And those things don't appeal to me. I love the adrenaline rush of being busy, but I don't want to do what you see in a lot of kitchens. And, back in 2000, it was a lot different. Not even 2000, 1998. Kitchens were different. Kitchens were really different for women.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I went to culinary school in 2006, I think. And even then, I mean, the sexism was rampant. And we'll get to that later. But I'm like, how did you wind up in Wichita and opening the kitchen? And you worked for Williams-Sonoma for a long time, so you weren't in a kitchen,
right? I wasn't. No. So I ended up in Wichita, Kansas because of my husband. He's from here, so I actually just moved out on a whim, and I was going to date him, and then I was going to leave, and that would be it. And I love Wichita. I love that it's still a small town to me. Like in comparison to New Jersey, it's very homey, and it's friendly and positive, and I like that. I worked for Williams-Sonoma as a corporate chef, so I did recipe testing. I created cooking classes for them. So I did more work on a computer than I did in the kitchen. I did do some in the kitchen, of course, but I did a lot more computer work, and they wanted me to move to California. That was the options. I was a remote corporate person, and my option was to either move to San Francisco or I would lose my position. And I didn't want to move to San Francisco. We have a great life here. I don't want to commute 2.5 hours each way. My kiddo was small then. It was hard enough traveling. I didn't want to just see him for bath time and bedtime. So I gave that up, and then I was home driving everyone crazy. And I tried to do a food blog. That doesn't keep me busy enough. And so my husband was like, okay, you need to do this. You need to open up a restaurant. And first I wanted to open up a cooking school, but we couldn't get the finances to balance. I don't think a full-time cooking school in Wichita is really doable at this point. So we're like, okay, let's do a restaurant. And then we found the location in Union Station. And honestly, the location is what really it made the deal. It closed the deal for me because that building has really happy bones. Sun comes in from all angles. It's been the restaurant of 2 other female-run restaurants. And I love that. I love that has that history in it. So we got there, and I was like, okay, let's do this. And it's been a huge learning. It's a gigantic learning curve for me, but it's going okay.
Yeah. It sounds amazing. So, hold on. I was just thinking about the film and thinking about all the amazing eye candy that's in it. And although that's a lot to talk about, we're really interested more in your experience. I'm just going to read a quote real quick from Food and Wine magazine that said, "You'd think that trying to get a Michelin star was a matter of life and death wrapped inside a nervous breakdown presented with a generous handful of dread." Can you talk a little bit about the pressures that come along with the world of fine dining? We certainly see those in the film, and I'm sure that you experience them too.
Absolutely. And honestly, I don't think, unfortunately, the Michelin star might be what keeps that wrapped up in dread for chefs, but it's not the only thing. And it's interesting because there was a woman on there, and her first name is Kat. She had the dark hair with the bangs, and she runs a Facebook group called Chefs with Issues. And I belong to that Facebook group, and it's very telling, the things that the pressures that we go through. It's this, no matter what the restaurant is, it's this huge adrenaline peak, and then it's a crash, and then it starts all over again. Because yes, you're busy, but when you're in service and you're busy, it's a whole different crazy busy. And then you crash from that, and then you have to go back up to that. So it's very exhausting physically and mentally, because you have to stay sharp. But then the other part of the restaurant, and this is true with every restaurant, is who's going to show up today? Who's not going to show up today? Whose place, who didn't prep well for their station? Like, there's so many things that are happening that there is always this feeling of like, it's almost like it tricks you with the anxiety. And I think if you add on a food critic, or the fact that you have 2 stars and you don't want to lose one, because that's got to be terrifying, right? You don't want to get a great review and then find out, oh my God, you're going to get a bad review. Like, it's got to hold you like hostage, that fear. I can totally see that. Like, yeah. That one chef that we watched him as the Michelin person, the manager called him, and his front of the house manager, you saw his face. Like, I don't think that was done for film. I think that was real. Like, his face was so anxious. Like, I felt it in my stomach watching him.
Totally.
Yeah, it's I mean, we've seen so many great chefs, like, and mostly men. I think Bourdain, Cantu, succumb to the pressures of their kitchens in the fine dining world. And Chefs with Issues, what a good place to be able to share this. But it seems like mental health is something that doesn't get addressed in this industry. And
it doesn't.
Maybe it's because it's such a hyper masculine industry, but either, like you said, that, the hours are long, there's rampant drug use, there's so much pressure. Do you feel like, I'm just thinking, like, how do you maintain, like, your sense of just health and self, and, keep that separate from, like, raising your family and having your own life?
I don't do a great job at it. I have to tell you, I bring the restaurant home a lot, to the point where both my son and my husband will be like, you're not allowed to talk about the kitchen at all today. And I don't have anything to say. And that's horrifying. Like, if I can't talk about the kitchen, I should have other things to say. So it's making your life not become like tunnel. You have to get rid of that tunnel vision. For me, it's definitely something I have to mindfully do. I cannot just say that, oh, I'm going to start reading books and taking walks and stuff. Like, I have to mindfully make myself present at my house, not and let the restaurant be. And I'm still learning how to do that. I've never been good at separating my work from my abilities at home, because my work comes from my heart. Like, I'm really lucky. I get to do something that brings me a lot of joy internally. Like, it's selfish. I like to cook because it makes me feel good to feed people. But there's a way of learning how to deal with the pressure. And I think that's the unfortunate thing, is that a lot of people in the restaurant industry turn to alcohol and drugs to deal with pressure. And there's a camaraderie in that, right? But what happens is then it's a steady slope down. And that kitchen is not a good fit for people like that. So, I mean, our kitchen is a clean kitchen, and I want it to stay a clean kitchen. It's also a female-ran kitchen, and I think that's a very different type of kitchen. I tell people that all the time, like, I don't want to do things like that. And I'm not saying that my male colleagues all do it, but there's no screaming, there's no belittling, there's no sexist comments, let alone any sort of like inappropriate touching or anything of that nature. Like, no, that is not going to happen on my watch, because I have to take responsibility of that. And I don't want that. And if you come in and you are under any type of influence, you're getting sent home. That's a selfish thing too, because I don't want you hurting yourself. That's going to hurt me. So like, I've been pretty lucky, and I finally see that that's the positive of being your own boss, because it's not the pay, because there's none. It's not the vacation time, because again, there's none. But the positive is that you get to control those surroundings and say, no, this is not acceptable behavior. I might have gone through it as a person being trained, but I'm not going to put anybody else through it, because I don't believe in that.
Yeah, and there's so much power to women being in charge. I mean, cheers to that, and cheers to being a mom and doing all of this too, because I'm right there with you with my own industry. It's hard to not bring it home, especially when you're from home.
Yes,
and
for sure.
you know, now when your kids are home, so life has changed a lot.
So looks like we lost Lela for a sec, but I'll jump in. Just curious, I guess, a little bit about what it's like working in the industry and being a mom.
It's a lot of juggling, and I'm not going to lie, there's a lot of times where my son's name is Jack. Jack has to come to the restaurant with me. My husband owns his own business too. He owns a construction business, so we both have our own businesses. So he's had to come to work with me. You know what? I need someone to wash dishes. Nobody showed up. It's going to be Jack if he's home and it's a Saturday. He's got to learn those things. I think the one thing that's very important is he's learning that hard work matters. And it builds your character. And he sees people that don't show up for work and don't put their heart into it, and he sees the repercussions of that. So I feel like it's a really good example of how he needs to choose how to lead his life. Like, if you choose to overdrink and you can't put a syllable together, you can't be at work, and you see that there's ramifications of that behavior. And so it's a lot of real life that he sees. We're getting better at it. I'm not at the restaurant 24/7 anymore. In the beginning, the first 2 years I was. So it's been a little bit better for him, because where he first loved it, it was such a glamorous thing that his mom and dad owned a restaurant. Then he hated it, because it was all that was continuing to keep us occupied. Now we've kind of formed a little bit more of a balance. So it's better now.
That's great. Yeah. And I was thinking too, like, it must be great for him to see, a strong woman in charge and, running a restaurant and doing all those things. And so it makes me kind of think a little bit about what you were saying before about, the industry of fine dining, it's specifically being so white male, straight dudes. We see a lot of that in the movie. And so, I also remember, like, Lela, when she was in culinary school, telling me a lot about some of these very mean and sexist chefs that, she's dealing with, and it's a reality. So how is that kind of behavior? It sounds like it affected your career by making a restaurant that didn't have that in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think we face it in all sorts of positions too, but in a restaurant, it's almost like it's expected. So they think they have to be that leader. That's the way they lead, because that's what their predecessor did. That's what the great chef blah, blah, blah did. And so they think that that's normal. So they can't think that they can be anything but that, because honestly, I think they think that that's the path to greatness. Right. And I don't think that that's true at all, because when you're on the reciprocating end of it, or the not so lovely end of it, you don't want that. And I certainly don't want that to be the way I lead people. And I think it's interesting, because in fine dining, I always go back to this. Cooking is art for that category, those Michelin stars. For me and so many people that work like we do, cooking is love. And there's a very big difference between the two. One is this scientific, visually inspired thing, and one is something that comes from your heart. Like I tell everybody when they start their day, if you bring bad juju into the restaurant, it's in our food. So whatever it is, we got to leave it outside, because that food is not going to taste good if we are in a bad place. And I have to hold myself to that too. And sometimes I have to walk out and just collect myself, because I don't want that energy in the restaurant. And I think it makes a really big difference on how your food comes out. But it's a whole different mentality and approach to food than these Michelin star chefs are taking. And I'm not saying they don't love what they do and they don't love people and feeding people, but I almost feel like theirs is a different challenge. Like, I don't think the customer is really the incentive about making that person feel like, oh, this is so good, this made my day better. I don't think that's really what promotes them or prompts them to do what they do.
Like their passion is different than your love, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that you're changing that culture, you know, with your kitchen, and you're this great role model for these people who work for you. That's really, really amazing. And I think that's like about the best thing that we can be doing, right, as women.
I think we have to keep trying, and I think we have to remember we don't have to do it the same way. Yeah. Nothing says that we have to do it the way somebody else will do it. And I say it very often, I'm not going to do it that way. And, you know, I'm 46 years old. I have a lot of confidence to say, I'm not going to do it that way. Like, if you don't like it, tough luck. And I've actually had, and mainly male chefs, I've actually had them leave because I'm not screaming and belittling or like a TV chef that throws stuff around. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that if that's what you need for me to gain your respect. That's your thing, not mine.
Yeah. Yeah. We're about the same age. So I think that we're in that sweet spot of being able to be like, hey, no, you know?
Right.
Let's talk about the food though in the film. So like, it's very pretty. It's very much food porn. It's, you know, all these molecular gastronomy techniques and smoke and pearls and things like that. It's so delicate. Was there any dish in the movie that you saw that you were like, that you thought was either totally amazing or completely and totally over the top?
So they were all so beautiful, right? And I think it's probably unfair, but like Alain Ducasse, who has the most Michelin stars, he has the record of them. I think he has 17 of them. So when his food was presented, like when they had clips of his food, it was so beautiful to me. But of course, I have a huge passion for French food. The things that were like, I don't think I want to eat that, is when we went to Japan and you saw those different weird jellies. Everything was gelatinized, being plated like flowers. First of all, I don't like the texture of Jell-O and jellies like that. But that did not make me say, I want to eat that piece of Jell-O that's from an oyster extract. Like, that doesn't make me say, wow. Nope. Now, it's gorgeous. It looked like something lacquered that you would find on a coffee table. Like, it was so pretty.
No to the oyster jelly. Okay.
No.
Are there any like of those fine dining techniques that you admire or that you've employed or that you would consider employing?
So we use a smoking gun to infuse smoke into, like, we did it with a butter once. It's great for seafood when you want just a hint of smoke. So that was the thing that they filled up with the little shavings and they lit on fire. So we all use that. We all use, you know, it's interesting because we all use the same things. Like, we use the same searing techniques that they're using, the same ones that we use. The way they cut that big skate, that fish that was like a round, it's the same way I would cut it. So those things there's a commonality in it. Their equipment, like, did you see that all kitchen? Oh my goodness. That was beautiful. But as beautiful as it was, my husband was chuckling because he watched it with me. He's like, you hate lifting copper pots. And he's right. Like, I have one and it's in the cupboard collecting dust because it's so heavy without food in it. I don't want to cook with it in. But it's glamourful. You know, it's got a lot of glamour to it. So the cooking techniques, the knife skills, they're all the same. We all do the same things. I know how to tourne. There was a person that was tourneing in the video. I mean, do I do it very often? No, but it's memorized in your head because you do it for hours in school. We've made aspic, which is what those gelatinized things are. So, yeah, I mean, I think for some people, but also that's cultural too, right? Like the French love like hard-boiled eggs and aspic and, you know, meat consommes and stuff like that. That's not really the kind of food that I think I don't ever long for. Like, I don't ever wake up and I'm like, man, I totally am craving aspic, you know, or oyster gels.
Oh, my go-to is an oyster gel. That's,
and you are definitely different than me.
No, I'm actually a vegetarian, so yeah. But I actually did spend some time with my honeymoon. We went to Japan and had some of the most incredible meals. And there, you know, the mise en place is very important, like the way that everything's plated, all of those sorts of elements. And so I was able to kind of bring that idea, that because I actually haven't really had a lot of fine dining experiences that resembled what I saw in the movie, with the exception of some of the Japanese stuff, just because they're so specific with how they plate things. It's beautiful.
Right.
So I'm curious, do you have any favorite food cities? Is there any place that kind of is your mecca?
I grew up close to New York, so that would definitely be my favorite food city because I spent the most time there and I've got to go to some of the really great restaurants that are there. Even as a little kid, I got to go to some of them. So that is really a cool way of being introduced to delicious foods. My family came from India, but my mom was always making us taste different foods. And where we're starting to see it in Wichita now, in New Jersey, it's always been about the local person who owns the Chinese restaurant and the pizzeria is owned by this family. So it's always that connection. And we would try food from, I can remember having Korean barbecue with my mom, dad, and my little brother, like for the first time around one of those greats. Like, it was really cool, but it's something that you grow up with. So I think New York definitely has a special place in my heart. I loved the food in France. Paris, of course, we went to so many different restaurants that we would ask. We stayed in a little it was a hotel, but it was like a French hotel. So not like one of the visitor ones. And we would ask them, like, where are you going to eat? Like, it's your birthday, where are you going to have birthday dinner? So we went to so many of those types of restaurants, and that was incredible. And then we went to Lourdes in France, and that was also incredible because it's right on the border of Spain. So the food has a French influence and it has a Spanish influence. So it's got really robust flavors. I don't know. I love food everywhere. I feel bad for saying it that way. I spent a lot of time traveling in San Francisco. Amazing, amazing, delicious restaurants.
I feel like loving food everywhere is the right chef answer. So you passed that test.
Thank you.
Oh, just listening to you talk about France right now. Oh, it's like, sounds so wonderful.
I know.
Okay, so away from fine dining, let's talk about like the Food Network. And you went on the Food Network and you won $20,000, right?
Yep.
On Guy's Grocery Games. So what's that like? You know, that culture. I mean, there's two different cultures. You know, there's sort of
absolutely
fine dining, and then the Food Network and the pop culture of it. What was that like?
It was crazy. And I always say you never stop learning about yourself. So when someone would ask me this question, like, oh, are you competitive? My answer would be like, absolutely not. Because I always think of competitive in the terms of sports. And I can't throw a ball So no, I'm not a competitive person. Oh, I am such a competitive person and I love it. So learning that about myself was lots of fun. And then I'm always a planner, and you can't plan for Guy's Grocery Games because he pulls out the craziest stuff. And like, I watched the show and I was like, still like, I didn't watch a clearance episode. So I didn't know what to do. So you had to think while you're running. So it was a super challenge. Like, talk about your brain going fast. I cannot even tell you that wheel in my was like on Mach 9. It was going so fast because you have to think and you only have 30 minutes to cook. But that pressure, again, that's similar to that pressure when you've got a whole row of tickets at your restaurant and a full dining room and you've got to get that food out. That rush, it's amazing. It's addicting.
What was it like though, doing that with a production crew all around you?
So I was really lucky. When I worked for Williams-Sonoma, I did videos for them. Now, every single time it's been very different. The ones for Williams-Sonoma, they were very, like, if you want to think of it in cooking terms, their mise en place was set. Like, they had very specific ideas of what they wanted it to be. This was completely narrated, unedited. Like, we didn't have cards. I had no idea what I was going to look like when I was on TV until I saw it the same day that everybody else saw it, because they don't let you see anything. And there's cameras that run with you. There's cameras on the cart. There's cameras everywhere. So you can't get nervous because you can't focus on all of that. You only have 30 minutes to get that food out. So it's almost easier than when you're the star of a video and everybody is looking at you, because then you're focusing on them. This was all about, what am I going to make and can I do it in this time? And I want to make sure I'm proud of it.
That's so neat.
So
and
it was totally different.
I can totally understand why the pressure would be like a big motivation there.
Yeah.
Would you ever consider, I mean, you've done like the Today Show, you've done a lot of TV stuff. Would you ever consider like Top Chef?
You know what? Yes and no. I don't think I want to be away from my family that long. It's a serious commitment, and I feel like it's a young chef's playing field. It's a long time to be away from your family if you win. You know, if you continue to go up, you're there for weeks and weeks. And I can't imagine being away from my restaurant for that long either. Now, if you ask me what my complete dream is to have my own cooking show. So I would rather do that than be on Top Chef. As much as I like to compete, I really love teaching people how to cook.
So we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but I'm curious how the pandemic has affected you in the kitchen. Are we in the midst of a crazy pandemic that has affected, so many restaurateurs in the world? Do you have things like Michelin Star? Does it make things like the Michelin Star system just feel totally irrelevant? Like, what has it been like for you?
Yeah, like right now, it doesn't even matter. You don't ever want to disappoint your customers. I would rather disappoint a Michelin Star or a food critic than disappoint the people that come to eat. But it's constantly changing. So it's been a really intense game of adaptation. And honestly, it's exhausting. I think everybody that you have the fear of losing your restaurant, because restaurants operate on such low profits. Like, our margins are really, really tight. Now, I'm not talking about the fine dining because they get to charge $300 for a plate of food. So their price margin is different than a normal restaurant's price margin is. So you're always worrying like, okay, am I going to do well? Am I going to do well? Because we've only been around about almost 4 years. So we're still very young. But now it's completely intensified because we just finished that 3rd year mark, and that's when it starts to get better. Like we had just gained momentum and this happened and it came crashing down. So now I have to rebuild all over again. And it's terrifying. And then people are scared and they're scared of different things. And so you do worry about that. Like, I want to make sure everyone feels comfortable and feels safe. And we've continued to change what we do because that is my primary goal. Like, I don't want you sitting down and having knots in your stomach and trying to eat food. Like, you're not going to feel good about it either. So it's just been a lot of adapting. I feel like people don't understand, or I feel like honestly the government doesn't understand that we can't keep flipping when they change the rules. And the rules are so gray sometimes that we don't have all the answers. And so then it's like, okay, should I just do what I think is right? Or is there something that's going to catch me and then I'm going to go on social media and someone's, tearing apart the kitchen because we didn't put 2 centimeters from the straw to the cup or some crazy nonsense that we were supposed to do that we didn't know about.
Yeah. It's really difficult and especially when there's like 50 states doing things 50 different ways, and people have access to social media and they're seeing things that are happening not only in their homes, but, in their friends' home states. And it's all just so confusing. I was reading an article today that was in People magazine that, there's a restaurant called the Inn at Little Washington.
Oh yeah. Patrick Connolly.
Yeah.
With the dummies.
Yeah. So they're basically like doing these social distancing tables, but they're putting mannequins dressed in 1940s garb in between the tables for when they.
I think that is so creative.
Okay. So yeah, it's totally like an art installation. It seems like something like, I think like you could find an artist here in Wichita to help, to do something fun and creative like that. I mean, a little bit creepy, but also cool at the same time. I think that'd be a really cool dining experience. But what other solutions to like social distancing, and like creative solutions are you seeing that you might be like, oh, I might do that?
I've seen people that have like used like really beautiful ribbon to close down areas. I think the unfortunate thing is you got to figure out what's going to work in your space. And it's a lot of measuring. And I'm super glad that my husband knows all this stuff about measuring because he owns a construction company, because I don't. We're going to have to first chart out the seating. Then we're going to have to look at what can we do to close those tables off, and what can we do to make sure people feel very comfortable. We've been serving everyone in to-go containers, but that also, I don't want people eating pasta and steak from a to-go container if they're sitting in the restaurant, but I don't know how they're going to feel about glass. So we've already decided we're going to ask them, would you like your food on a disposable or would you like it on a glass plate? Because I want it to be the comfort. The hardest part about social media is people will feel that they can say absolutely anything without any consequence. And this pandemic has brought people to points that I think are completely unacceptable, calling people murderers for opening up and things like that. Like, there's a lot of strong feelings about this. So as a place that needs the public to look at them in a positive way, we're all walking a fine line with restaurant dining. Places that are opening and places that aren't opening. We're being judged, and it's pretty nerve-wracking.
Yeah, and I think you're completely right in that communication and transparency is absolutely key. It is in my industry that I work in, and I think it is in every industry. And those measures that you're going to put in place for your customers, giving them choices, I think that's really, really, really smart.
I want them to be comfortable.
And it empowers them to make their own decisions.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you want to do some quick fire questions?
Sure.
All right. Have you ever eaten at a Michelin starred restaurant?
I don't think so.
No?
Unless Thomas Keller's per se or Danielle's has ever had a Michelin star. I don't think I have. and I'd have to look it up. See,
Right.
that's how I don't even know if they do it or not. They just were restaurants I had on my wish list.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I haven't. Leela, have you?
I have, because I lived in Chicago.
Oh, so where did you go?
The last one I went to was Fat Rice. I think that has one Michelin star. I might be wrong, but and then like I lived down the street from Schwa.
What about Charlie Trotter's place? Does he have a Michelin star?
I don't
Or
know.
is he too old for you?
No. He was around when I was there.
See, that's what's funny about this. None of us even know. We've eaten at some amazing places,
Yeah.
but I don't know if they are on the wall or not. I mean, I didn't look.
Right.
I was too busy looking at everything else.
I kind of went to Google earlier to like look at the list, and the list was too long, and I was like, I don't have time for this. Moving on. I probably have. Do I care? I know it's cool to know.
I actually looked up yesterday to see how many women had gotten Michelin stars.
That's a good one. And how
Yeah.
many?
A lot of them, like 10 or 12, and a lot of them were so, like the first one was like 1902 or some crazy nonsense like that. Like, you know, really long time ago. And then there was a lot of them were from the early 19, like when they started doing them, which is great in some ways. That's kind of interesting. But I don't know. I don't know how many female chefs run fine dining restaurants either.
We'll have to do some Googling later.
Yeah, or people of color. I mean, there's obviously plenty of people cooking, making amazing food, but for whatever reason, Michelin isn't necessarily going and reviewing their restaurants.
Right.
Which leads me to my next question. What is, if you can remember, the best meal or one of the best meals that you've ever had in a restaurant?
It would be at Danielle's. We had the tasting menu, and I think it was like 10 courses. And then we were talking to our server, which, by the way, French hospitality is unbelievable. Everything is oui madame, anything you want, you get. It's like amazingly crazy. So once they found out that I went to the French Culinary Institute, they kept bringing out things, compliments of the chef, and Danielle Boulud was there. So we got to see the inside of the kitchen and everything. So like the whole experience was unbelievable. But the food, every bite, you were like, oh my goodness, like unbelievable. Like that gnocchi, it like had this liquid cheese in it and it popped in your mouth. I tell you what, I could eat like 50 of them and still be happy.
Oh my gosh, that reminds me of, we went to Graham Elliott Bowles restaurant when I was in culinary school, like for our like graduation, like dinner of our class. And I remember there was this Twinkie, this savory Twinkie, and it was so good. And you just reminded me of that. But like something you just said about like seeing the kitchen and in the inner workings, to me, like that gives me the same thrill as seeing a film set. It's the same like sort of people in action working to create this like amazing, you know, end product. And I think that's why, like, you know, it's not a coincidence that we call, you know, mise en place for food, and then we call it mise en scène for film. And so I think that there's like, you know, that just brought me to that place.
And I think that's also part of the experience. I don't think you can separate out the food from the experience. And it doesn't always have to be a fine dining. You could be eating a hot dog, you know, watching a ball game, but that experience is what makes the food also. Like you can't separate one from the other. And I think that it weaves itself together. That's why I think when we dine in, it's so powerful that you have this opportunity to make someone feel better.
Yeah, I think a lot about kind of food and the connection between kind of what you were saying, like love and just memory. And I have all these foods that I kind of mourn the loss of, you know, like from restaurants that are no longer, where there's like a specific dish. I'm just like, oh my God, I can't believe that I will never eat that again. It was
I missed that, yeah.
Oh, it drives me nuts. Okay, so next quick fire question. If you could eat anywhere in the world, where would you choose?
I don't know if it's a where, it's with. I want to eat it with my family. Oh, I'd want to go back to Paris.
Mm.
I think, yeah. Yeah.
That's a good answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, bread is so
Oh, yeah,
like
bread.
integral to the French culture. And when you've had good French bread, it's like nothing else. It's magic.
And the cheeses, just
Yeah.
the cheeses alone. Yeah.
Okay, so the flip side of that question, when you're home alone and you
Uh-huh.
need to eat something, nobody else is around, right? What is your guilty pleasure food that you make only for yourself?
There's nothing I make only for myself, but there definitely are things that nobody else is like, I definitely would like some of that. Comfort food is, for me, is like roasted chicken. Like, I love, love, love roasted chicken, no matter how you put it, how you season it, whatever nationality of flavors is on, it makes me very happy. I also have guilty pleasures, like I love Lucky Charms. I don't eat very often because I don't like milk, but that's definitely one of them, or like Doritos. So there's things like that that I definitely enjoy eating, and I don't eat them very often with other people. I'll tell you a funny story, because I've tried to, like, I grew up eating whole foods. Like, we didn't grow up, TV dinners were like a treat at our house. So like we would have TV dinners and watch the Cosby Show on Friday night. And that was like a really big treat because you got to sit in the living room, not at the dining room table. So I grew up every day otherwise eating at the dining room table with my family. We always had greens. We always had a starch. Like, we had a complete meal. So raising my son, I really tried hard to incorporate those things. And he went to a friend's house to sleep over, and he calls me and he goes, Mom, there are these things, and they're like tiny little egg rolls, but they're filled with pizza flavors. And he's like, they are amazing. And I'm laughing to myself because I'm like, my kid is like 9 years old and just found out about pizza rolls. I speak as a mother, by the way.
It's like Totino's.
Yeah, exactly.
He never got that either.
He was amazed. And actually, funny enough, that birthday, that's what he requested be his meal. Like, he wanted pizza rolls.
You know, it's funny. I also grew up in a house where we had that. My mom cooked a lot of food, like a lot of flavors,
Right.
And on my birthday, like, I think I was probably like, I don't know, 10 or 11. She was like, what do you want for your birthday dinner? And I'm like, I want white meat turkey, mashed potatoes from the box, and gravy from the jar. Like, I just want like that kind of food.
But all the other kids were having, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's funny too, because there's definitely those foods that can be kind of trashy and super good, but they can also be done up to be very fancy. So like pizza, obviously.
Right, absolutely.
Pizza roll, right? But then my husband just reminded me, we actually do have a 1-star restaurant that we go to sometimes here, Pizzeria Mozza, Osteria Mozza, which is a Nancy Silverton's restaurant. And it's like, I have never had pizza like that. It's incredible.
So yummy, right?
But it's just a sometimes thing, like when you're buzzed and you're walking around, you don't want to go to Osteria Mozza. You want to go, to whatever the trashiest place is on the corner and just fold up a slice and eat it.
Absolutely. And I think, again, it's what you're drawing comfort from, right? So I was in such a crappy mood, and I was like, I'm going to have Kraft macaroni and cheese. And Scott, my husband's name is Scott, he's like, you don't even want to try the Velveeta one? I'm like, no, I want the powder. Like, I want that orange powdered mac and cheese. Because in my head, I remember having it as a treat and being like, oh my God, this is so good. It's so different. It tasted so horrible, but I ate an entire bowl of it because I was searching for what I longed for from my memory, which of course is tinted and, not exactly the same, but you were searching for that comfort in some ways.
Totally. So connected to that.
Butter in it.
Sorry, go. What was that?
I couldn't even eat it like that.
I don't like that at all, but when I make it for my kids and I add the butter, like, I can have a bite of it and I'm like, oh, this is good.
Yeah.
So it's a good pantry item, right? Like it's a good last minute
Absolutely.
mom pantry item. What are three things that you have in your fridge that you always have in your fridge? Yeah.
Mustards. I have a ton of mustard fridge. Because you can use them on meats, you can make a vinaigrette with them, you can flavor vegetables with them, and they keep forever. We always have wine for the same reasons. When you cook with it, you add a ton of flavor with one glug. And I always have butter.
Mm. Yeah,
I definitely have a fatty fridge.
Those are amazing ingredients, though. Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot you can do with them, and you need to have versatility. And, like right now with this pandemic, it was comical because all the dried beans were gone, all the rice was gone. And I'm like, I have to wonder, because I've taught people how to cook for so long. I'm like, I don't think they know how to do anything with those items. Like, I was just chuckling to myself because the things that were missing were dry storage things, but how many people actually cook with dry storage things? So
right. Yeah, and you can actually take the wine and the butter and the mustard and give them that extra, oomph. That'd be a good video series for you to do right now.
We actually taught about cooking from the pantry, which we've done a little bit of, and we're going to try to do a few more.
That'd be great. Let us know. We will share that around.
All right.
So we're going to wrap it up very soon, but we could talk to you all night. This has been so wonderful. So, we talked a little bit about the memories and the nostalgia that food can flood us with. And since we're Mama Film, we must ask, what is a childhood dish or family recipe that brings back that for you?
So my mom wasn't a really good cook. She tried her hardest because she had to cook. Honestly, like, she had to feed all of us. My dad, on the other hand, was a great cook, but he worked a lot. So he would make breakfast. So breakfast definitely has a tug on my heart. But we're Persian, and we make this thing. It's called ravo. It's a sweet dish, and it's topped with almonds and golden raisins with it. And it has vanilla and cardamom flavors in it. And it's usually served for celebrations. So like, we'd have it on our birthdays, we'd have it on wedding days, things like that where you're celebrating. I make it for my house, and my stepsons, their wives, everybody, my son, my husband, we all love it. And I love that because it's a connection to my mom and dad. And my mom used to make amazing ravo. That was like the one thing she could make fantastic. So definitely that connection. What's that?
Can you share that recipe with us, and we'll put it on Mama Film?
Yeah, I think I actually have it typed up, so I can email it to you, or I can text it to you.
That would be amazing. And cardamom, absolutely. I love cardamom so much.
Yeah, it has such nice, I don't know, it's very comforting to me. And you can eat it cold, you can eat it warm, you can eat it for breakfast, you can eat it for dessert.
And you can, that sounds delicious. Yes, send it. Okay, so 2 more questions, then we're going to wrap it up. Okay. Who are your who are your like chef idols or food idols? Be they famous chefs, or be they, some relative or some mentor?
So I love Julia Child. I mean, the way she tells the stories about food is always through happiness and love, and with a chuckle on the side, right? So she's definitely one of my food idols for sure. James Beard, because the way he writes about food makes you want to dive into the book and read and eat it. Like, it's just fantastic. So I love him. And I know I'm talking about people that have passed. Jack Pepin, so I was really fortunate. He's one of the deans of my school. So he would come in and do little demonstrations for us. And my God, that guy's knife skills, unbelievable. Like, he had to be in his 70s when I was in school, maybe late 60s. But he could make an omelet in a blink, and it was perfect. He could peel an apple and have all the skin in one connection. And he said something that I've always thought about, and I really feel that that's true, is you can take like a truffle or foie gras and it's already delicious. So you don't really have to do a lot to it. If you want to see the makings of a real chef, someone who really cares about food, give them a scrawny chicken and see what they're going to do. And I think that is really something very important for us to remember, is to respect the scrawny chicken, because we eat more scrawny chicken than foie gras.
Oh, I love that. And yeah, he's amazing. All of those people you just mentioned. I specifically love Julia Child as well. Okay, last question. What are the 3 kitchen tools that you can't live without?
A knife, 100% a knife. For me, it would be a 7-inch vegetable knife. It's the one that I always pick up on my own. A really good deep saute pan, because if it's deep enough, you can braise in it, you can still fry in it, you have a lot of versatility. The straight sides make a big difference. You can put it in the oven and bake a cake in it if you have to. So to me, that is a very, very important thing to have in the kitchen. And then my third, what I always use is tongs. I stir with tongs, I can flip with tongs, I can use them for virtually, I can serve pasta with tongs. So I would say tongs.
Brilliant. Love that. And for the saute pan, or is it like cast iron, or is it?
I like stainless steel.
Okay.
I think I've worked in kitchens too long that my arms and my wrists get tired. So I want to use a pan that's other side. Now, stainless steel is still heavy, but it's not cast iron heavy.
Yeah, absolutely. Cast iron is very heavy. Well,
yeah, and it can take a really big beating, and it doesn't need to be seasoned and all that nonsense. So it's a really well utilized pan in anybody's kitchen, I would say.
Amazing tips from the amazing Natasha Gandhi-Rue. Thank you so much for joining.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. This was a lot of fun.
So fun. And keep us posted about how we can come in and support you when you open. I know you have family meals available now and other things. So let us know, and let us know about your recipes, and we'll gladly share it with our community. You're an inspiration.
Absolutely. Thank you. This was a lot of fun.
You're doing great work. For those of you who are watching, you can learn more about mamafilm by following us on Facebook and Instagram. And stay tuned for more food-inspired films and conversations as Eric and I kick off our scheduled Mise en Scène, Mise en Place food film festival virtually this summer. Cheers. We were supposed to.
Ooh, that's awesome.
Our plan is to present it in August here in Wichita, but we're going to try to do some virtual conversations about it before then, just so we can get excited. And, if we can't do them in person, we can talk about food like this. It's beautiful. And to quote the amazing Julia Child, if you're afraid of butter, use cream. Have a wonderful week, and we wish you good health. And Natasha, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah. We look forward to seeing you in person very soon and eating with you.
Thank you. I'd love it.